Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Arbeit. Today, I have one of our newest team members here, Justin. Today, we're going to be talking about why numbers are being mislabeled as spam or scam. It's something that we deal with here every day. And with us going to Contact.io in the next couple of days, we figured it would be a great topic to share with you guys. So, Justin, great to have you
Thank
here
you.
on the show.
Yeah, I'm excited to be here and I'm excited to be going to Contact.io. It'll be my first time going.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a great show and we're excited to be going. To kick things off and just get us started with this, I can speak from my personal experience of just working with clients. And it seems like this problem has become much bigger over the last couple of years with calls being mislabeled as spam or scam. I know that you're dealing with a lot of people these days. Off the top of your head, how often would you say it is that businesses are being mislabeled?
The amount of people that I've talked to and amount of different types of businesses that I've talked to, people have this issue of being labeled negatively, whether or not they're high volume, low volume, big or small. Chances are, if you're making a phone call and you're trying to reach consumers, you're going to fall victim to being falsely labeled as spam and scam. So, in my experience, a lot of people are being mislabeled incorrectly, which is terrible.
Yeah, I think like the biggest problem is the carriers don't reach out to tell you when this is happening, which for a lot of businesses, like you said, they might not realize that they're doing something wrong. They might not realize that they're even being affected by this. And then a lot of times it's the consumer who tells you, hey, your calls are being mislabeled. And that's how a lot of people find out. In working with these businesses recently to try and fix those labels, have you found like any one of the carriers in particular to be more difficult to work with than the other, or maybe like people get labeled on more than the other?
I will say that probably the most challenging by far is Verizon. With that being the case, it hasn't really stopped us from remediating those labels. It just takes a little bit longer of a process. Have that more thorough conversation about compliance, about, hey, these are legitimate companies trying to make phone calls. All carriers are great. Some just take a little bit more effort than others. And I would say Verizon by far is the most challenging.
Yeah, no, I agree. In my experience, like the people that I've worked with, Verizon always seems to be the most challenging to work with. And it seems to be the longest like turnaround times too for
Yeah.
getting those numbers fixed. Definitely some things that people can do there to cut down on the amount of times that those numbers are coming up. That kind of comes into our next point. So when we think about the biggest factors that are causing call labeling today, what in your experience has been like the things that you're hearing when you get information back from the carriers of like why these calls are being labeled in the first
Yeah, of
place?
course, there's so many different reasons why your number could be mislabeled. Some of the more major ones that I think are affecting most businesses are your call volumes and then your consumer reporting. Just you have a phone call with someone, they may be having a bad day, or they may not like that kind of conversation that they're having, and then they report your number. Another thing is we have the practice in our industries that we've worked with of just rotating out phone numbers constantly. And chances are those phone numbers are already negatively labeled before your company even touches them. So using numbers that aren't clean, putting them in there and rotating them in that rotation of your dialers, the chances are you're already negatively labeled without even calling from a phone number that you recently got.
Yeah, it's interesting what you were saying about like getting large buckets of phone numbers and constantly rotating through them. It's almost like unlearning bad practices because I know for such a long time, the standard practice for a lot of businesses was to just constantly keep rotating out those phone numbers. And one of the things that we're seeing is when you're purchasing those new numbers for the first time is they almost need like a bit of a warm up period. Like they need some traction on them before you go full tilt and just start really calling super heavily on them. So that's definitely one of the things that I've seen on my side, and absolutely what you said with call volume and consumer reporting, such a huge piece in there, particularly when we're working in industries like debt collection. Unfortunately, just the nature of the beast that people aren't super excited to get those calls. So I think going off of that, some things that are really important. Of course, like your
Yep.
messaging, you're going to be limited in some senses of what you can put in there. And at the end of the day, still, most people aren't super thrilled to be hearing from a
Yeah.
debt collector. But definitely that, I think having consent on your calls
Important.
again, and just making sure that you're calling people at the times that they want to be called at, if it's on the channel that they want to be contacted at. So, yeah, I think a lot of additional things in there that can definitely contribute that people might not realize can lead to those
Yeah,
labels.
exactly. I totally agree. There's so many different things. That's definitely why having something in place to make sure your numbers are, for one, not negatively labeled. And if they are negative labeled, they're getting remediated. Get those phone numbers clean to where you don't have to rotate any number out. Have that consistency, that forward facing number when you do make that phone call, when you make that connection is so important. But I definitely agree with you.
Yeah, it's interesting what you said about that forward facing number too. I know like even as it's like a rabbit hole of how deep you can get into this, but even having specific dedicated numbers for maybe inbound style traffic versus outbound style traffic, and really just segmenting out your numbers. Certain times we see businesses, if they're having really high volume on their outbound numbers, maybe those are numbers that they rotate out more. But then if you have a separate number that's on your marketing material, things like that, if you use that for dedicated traffic, you have less of a risk of that number getting labeled, which again, if you already have the billboards and the business cards and all that, it can definitely be helpful to not have to swap out that number. Again, it's unfortunate that a lot of businesses are in this situation where their numbers are getting mislabeled. Sometimes it feels like they're not their fault. But for those businesses out there who maybe are running into that problem, what are like the most helpful things that you see people doing right now to tackle this problem? Of course, we offer a solution for that, but are there some other things that people are able to do to help that?
Yeah, of course. A couple of the easiest ways that you can navigate not getting negatively labeled, just as like best business practices, is just make sure your traffic's opt-in. Make sure your customers that you're calling are okay with being called so they don't have that negative feedback. They don't have that surprise of who's calling me. Oh my gosh, what is this going on? Warm up your numbers. Make sure you're gradually putting phone calls on a phone number rather than dropping thousands and thousands of phone call on a new number that you just got. That's going to instantly get you flagged within those carriers. And of course, manage those complaints. Take complaints from customers seriously, look that over and integrate in some kind of training to maybe lower the complaints that you get, lower the negative feedback that you get on those one-on-one interactions that you do have with those connections that you answer. There's so many different things. And of course, like we talked about before, number lab. We're offering free tests. Those tests, no strings attached. See how your numbers are doing and then work out a business strategy ahead of time to see, oh, maybe we are negatively labeled pretty heavily. And then that compounds those labels staying a lot longer with those negative feedbacks of people that are already submitted. There's so many different things.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that you talked in there is doing some training internally. And I think a lot of times it can feel backwards to encourage people to complain. But I think if you're taking in those complaints internally, that's always a lot better than those complaints going out to BDB, FCC, all those other places. So definitely, I think that's a really important thing to try and just give people a soundboard to express how they're feeling. That can be a really helpful strategy. And then, yeah, of course, I think a great thing to do is just, if you're not sure how your caller IDs are coming up right now, absolutely test them. And with that said, I know you're going out to Contact.io actually tomorrow. It's
Yep,
coming up
tomorrow.
fast. So absolutely, if you're going to be at the show, stop by the booth. Justin will be there to test your numbers. We'll do a complimentary test for you. And Justin, I don't know if there's any other plans that you guys have when you're out at the show next week.
Nope, just stop by the booth, say hi, and like I said, take advantage of that free test. Make sure you know where you currently stand, and then just go from there and make those decisions. But definitely just be informed. Get that insight. That insight, free insight's great insight. Have that information at your fingertips to really know where you need to go from there.
Awesome. Justin, I appreciate you taking time to sit down with me and talk about our favorite topic at hand, spam and scam labeled by calls. But good luck at Contact.io to everybody who is traveling over the next couple days out to Denver. Safe travels, and we hope to see you at the show.